It only took 3 months, 11 games, 12 to 13 weeks. But we finally got an entertaining college football game out of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And it was one of the best college football games I've seen. An instant classic. Shout out to both Alabama and Auburn for one of the best Iron Bowls and one of the best college football games that I've ever seen. Both teams played like this was their Super Bowl. The game was highly entertaining through all 4 quarters. There were some questionable calls. Alabama fans have reason to be upset, especially with that phantom second that was added to the clock before halftime that allowed Auburn to kick a field goal. Bama fans will make the case that that was the difference of the game. And in some ways, it's a valid point. I think the difference in the game was the 2 pick sixes thrown by Mac Jones. If you look at the game on paper, Alabama dominated Auburn. 515 total yards compared to 354 by Auburn. Mac Jones clearly outplayed Bo Nix, who I thought was serviceable but far from great against what I think is a weak Alabama defense compared to what we're used to seeing out of Nick Saban's defense. But you can't gift a team 14 points on the road and expect to win. Add to that the 13 penalties for 96 yards. That's the 2 things that lost Bama the game. I saw on Twitter where Bama fans were blaming their kicker. It's not his fault. Alabama shouldn't have been in the situation to begin with where they needed a field goal to tie the game and send it into overtime. The kicker didn't throw 2 pick sixes. The kicker didn't commit 13 penalties. Now, I agree with fans being upset about that second being added to the clock before halftime that allowed Auburn to kick a field goal. I mean, that was some bullshit. I've never understood why the clock stops on first down in college football. They need to get rid of that concept altogether. It drags the game out. It's unnecessary. I've been saying all year that Alabama has no business being in the college football playoffs, and I've received some flack for it. Ultimately, I was proven right. Only 2 quality opponents Alabama played in 2019. They lost both games. They lost to LSU at home, Auburn on the road. They needed a double-digit win against Auburn on Saturday to even have a prayer at the postseason. And they would have had a double-digit win had the mistakes been eliminated. Let's just face the facts. Alabama is not a playoff caliber team. They're just not. This defense is not good. I said it back in October when they gave up over 30 points to Ole Miss at home. This is what I want from college football every week, though. Games like this. Games like this should be happening every Saturday. We shouldn't have to wait until October, November to get great college football games. The month of September has become the preseason of college football. Hell, for teams like Clemson, the entire regular season is the preseason. Clemson will enter the playoffs untested. They haven't played a ranked opponent all year. I don't think it's too much to ask from a fan's perspective to have competitive football games. I don't think that's too much to ask. You notice on this podcast, I rarely talk about college football. There's a reason for that. They give me nothing to talk about. What's interesting about Alabama blowing out Western Carolina or Clemson beating Wofford? Who fucking cares? I watched less college football this year than at any other point in my adult life. A couple of weeks ago, I watched 0. None. The first time that's happened. I'm not going to continue to waste my time watching these boring games. If I want boring football, I can go watch the XFL in 2020. Now, the biggest question coming out of the Iron Bowl is the future of Gus Malzahn at Auburn. He's been on the hot seat. Some fans in Auburn want him gone. Actually, a lot of fans in Auburn want him gone. Paul Feinbaum came out a few weeks ago and said that Gus Malzahn should resign because he's not appreciated. Well, of course he's not appreciated. He's been progressively worse each season since the national championship run back in 2013. Your biggest in-state rival is racking up national titles. And you're going 8-4, 9-3, 10-2. That's not going to cut it. I don't think winning the Iron Bowl should save his job. People in college football put too much emphasis on these rivalry games. Oh, he beat Alabama. He should be back next year. He should keep his job. It's one game. This type of thing doesn't happen in the NFL. Oh, the Falcons beat the Saints in New Orleans, so Dan Quinn should be brought back, even though they went 3-13. Winning one game shouldn't wipe out the mediocrity in Auburn the past few seasons. Gus Malzahn was brought in because he was supposed to improve this offense. This offense has been dreadful most of his time in Auburn. Bo Nix hasn't progressed. We've talked about it here on the podcast. I mean, he was serviceable Saturday, but he wasn't great. 173 yards on 50% completion. 1 touchdown. More importantly, he didn't have any turnovers. But I've seen no growth from Bo Nix this season. And that's my biggest reason that Malzahn should be gone. He's had an entire offseason and a full season to develop his young quarterback. And it's just not happening. Auburn has struggled to score points all year. They only scored 20 points at home against an awful Ole Miss defense. They scored 24 points against Tulane. Tulane! Not exactly a college football powerhouse. Tulane develops doctors, not football players. Gus Malzahn has had 7 years to improve this team and has failed to do so. Every year, they have one of, if not, the best defense in the SEC. And every year, the offense struggles to move the chains. We'll see what Auburn decides to do regarding the future of Gus Malzahn, but in my opinion, he should be gone. All right, Behind the Line, episode 27. I'm your host, KC. Hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Let's get to the good, the bad, and the ugly from this past weekend. I'm going to open up today with the NBA and the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron and Anthony Davis and the Lakers into November 17-2. Best record in the NBA. Talks of an NBA title run are going on in Tinseltown for the first time in a decade. This is the best Lakers team since the Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol title days back in 2009, 2010. And you can't take it away from them. The Lakers are a good team. Anthony Davis has fit in seamlessly with LeBron James. Kyle Kuzma has stepped up big as a role player coming off the bench. Hell, even Dwight Howard is playing surprisingly well. He's giving them good minutes off the bench, about 20 minutes a game, and he's producing. The Lakers have a chance to compete for the NBA title, but it's going to be tough to get out of the Western Conference. And there are some glaring holes on this team. Their record's also a bit inflated. Their November schedule was super easy. The majority of the teams the Lakers played last month are bound for the lottery. Best win in November was on November 1st at Dallas. Or maybe the November 8th win against the Miami Heat. Either one. The point is, the Lakers are beating up on scrubs. They're winning games that they're supposed to win. When you have LeBron and AD, you're supposed to beat teams like the Bulls and the Wizards. Only loss in November was a home loss against the Raptors. One of the only good opponents they played last month. I wouldn't crown the Lakers just yet. I've been saying since the start of the NBA season that the Lakers aren't even the best team in Los Angeles. We're about to see what these Lakers are really made of. The schedule in December is brutal. Opened up Sunday night against Dallas. They lost by 14 points at home. AD had a 27-10 double-double. Typical of his time in New Orleans. AD puts up big numbers. His team loses. Next 3 games are at Denver, next night at Utah, and then at Portland. Denver and Utah on back-to-back nights is about as tough a back-to-back as you can get in this league. 2 physical teams. Then they make an East Coast road trip where they're gone for nearly 2 weeks before returning home to face Denver and the Clippers. December is going to tell us all we need to know about the Lakers. They make it through these next 14 games above 500 in the month of December. Then we can talk NBA title chances. But being 17-3, beating up on lottery teams, doesn't impress me. All 3 of the Lakers' losses are against teams that we expect to be in the playoffs come the spring. And 2 of those losses were by double digits. All right, the NFL season's heating up. This has been one of the better NFL regular seasons in recent memory. Ratings are up. There's no clear favorite to win the Super Bowl. We got a potential Super Bowl preview Sunday in Baltimore with the Ravens and Niners. And I'll be honest, that game delivered. One of the best games of the regular season so far. Baltimore won 2017, and the game was close and entertaining throughout. But don't let the final score fool you. This game should not have been close. Baltimore should have won this game by double digits. Lamar Jackson had his first fumble of the season. He fumbled the ball in the red zone on the first drive of the second half, basically wiping away a touchdown because Baltimore was moving the ball with ease on that drive. Marcus Peters then uncharacteristically misplayed a Jimmy G touchdown pass. Baltimore was also hit with 2 terrible pass interference calls. They were called for pass interference on defense on a 4th down play that bailed the Niners out. Ended up giving San Francisco 3 free points. Then on offense, there was an obvious pass interference on the Niners. No call was made. So Ravens coach John Harbaugh throws the challenge flag. Officials review it, and they still get it fucking wrong. It was unbelievable. If the Ravens had lost this game, all we would be talking about is them getting screwed by the officials. They've got to clean up the officiating in the NFL. Watching that game yesterday, I started to wonder, how long can Lamar Jackson continue to be effective playing the way that he plays? The strength of his game is his ability to run the football, which opens up the passing lanes, keeps the defense guessing. But Lamar Jackson takes a lot of hits. A lot of hits. His game isn't set up for long-term sustainability in this league. There's only so many hits your body can take before you start to break down. There's a reason that running backs had the shortest career span in the NFL. The history of quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson is not good in this league. His backup, RG3, is a prime example. One injury to his legs, he was never the same. To remain in this league long term, Lamar Jackson's going to have to change his game. He's going to have to become more of a pocket passer. Baltimore winning sets up the game of the year next week in the NFC. San Francisco travels to New Orleans to take on the Saints. I said last week, starting in Baltimore, we would see a 2-game collapse for the 49ers. And I'm sticking with my take. I think the Saints beat the 49ers next week and grab the number 1 seed in the NFC. The Saints have the best run defense in the NFL. I think Dennis Allen's going to force Jimmy G to beat them, and I don't think he can. We'll talk more about that later in the week. As predicted on this podcast, Ryan Tannehill has stepped in and completely changed the course of the Tennessee Titans season. All he's done since being inserted into the starting lineup in Week 6 is go 5-2, beat the Chiefs, and lead his team on their biggest win thus far of the season Sunday against the Colts. Tannehill's numbers won't jump out at you. Take Sunday, for instance. He only had 182 yards passing. But the Titans don't need him to put up MVP caliber numbers. This offense is anchored by Derrick Henry in the running game. They pound you into submission and rely on the strength of their defense. All Mike Vrabel needs from Ryan Tannehill is to manage the game and don't turn the ball over, which is exactly what he's doing. 0 interceptions the last 3 weeks. Titans are 3-0 during that stretch. The Titans and Colts are similar in a lot of ways. Indy needs the same thing from Jacoby Brissett that the Titans are getting from Ryan Tannehill. But unfortunately for the Colts, Jacoby Brissett has collapsed the last few weeks. Indy is 1-3 in their last 4 games, and Brissett has been god-awful. After their Thursday night loss to the Texans, I talked for a while on this podcast about Indianapolis's inability to throw the ball downfield. Sunday, we found out why they don't. It's apparent why Frank Reich keeps the reins tight on Jacoby Brissett. He threw a deep pass for about 30 yards in the middle of the fourth quarter. Colts are down 7. And Brissett missed badly. Titans picked it off. Actually, it was thrown right to a Titans defender. Returned it for a touchdown and basically sealed the game for Tennessee. Tennessee's trailing the Texans by 1 game in the AFC South. And they face them twice over the next 4 weeks. This division could come down to their Week 17 matchup. Actually, let's go ahead and get to the Texans. I'm going to lead off the bad segment talking about their opponents Sunday night. Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. I don't think the Patriots have been as vulnerable as they are right now during the nearly 20-year Brady Belichek run. The final score in that game was close, but the Texans ran New England off the field Sunday night. For the second time this season, Tom Brady was embarrassed on national television. This offense is terrible. I've heard people make the excuse that Brady's throwing to receivers that we've never heard of, but that's always been the case in New England. No one heard of Danny Amendola or Danny Woodhead or Julian Edelman before Tom Brady. The difference between then and now is that Tom Brady is older. He used to have the ability to elevate his receivers and his running backs. That doesn't appear to be the case any longer. This offense hasn't been in any type of rhythm for most of the season. And we're in December. They've had 3 full months to figure this offense out. And they're getting worse. New England's averaging 18 points over the last month. That's never happened with number 12 under center. The Patriots are in trouble, people. I'm telling you. Buffalo's 1 game behind in the AFC East. And Josh Allen is getting better. He's no longer the turnover machine that he was earlier this season. When I did my mid-season review, one of my concerns with Buffalo was the turnovers. I said if they could clean up the mistakes, the Bills would be a scary team. Since that time, Buffalo's 4-1, with only 1 turnover in their last 5 games. The media talks about how great the New England defense is, and they're good, but they struggle against mobile quarterbacks. Who are the Patriots going to have to face in the playoffs? Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Mobile quarterbacks. They're 1-2 against those guys, with a matchup looming with Josh Allen and the Bills in Week 16 that could decide the winner of the division. Yeah, the Patriots could end up a wild card team. For the first time in 15 to 20 years, New England is in danger of not winning the AFC East. All right, let's move on. John Gruden's team is in the midst of a collapse of their own. The Raiders are god-awful. Blown out for the 2nd straight week. They've lost each of their last 2 games by 31 points. It's almost like their opponents are playing a college team. The Raiders are getting their asses kicked. This team is the definition of undisciplined, which is normal for a team coached by John Gruden. They shoot themselves in the foot every week with penalties. They're always playing behind the chains. After going 3 weeks without turnovers and winning 3 in a row, the Raiders have turned the ball over 7 times their last 3 games. This team isn't good enough defensively to overcome these types of mistakes. The Saints, for example, have been undisciplined the last several weeks, but the team is good enough to overcome. That's not the case in Oakland. Defense is 28th in the league. They can't stop anyone in the passing game. Sam Darnold lit this secondary up. As bad as the Oakland defense is, they actually played a decent game Sunday. Now, you wouldn't know that by looking at the scoreboard, seeing as how Kansas City put up 40 points. But the Raiders' defense held the Chiefs to 259 total yards. They held Mahomes to just 163 yards passing. They did their job. So who's to blame? Can you blame Derek Carr? I mean, he did have 2 interceptions. He had a miserable game. But I don't blame Derek Carr. I blame John Gruden. This loss, actually the past 2, are squarely on the shoulders of John Gruden. The Raiders' offense is too predictable. You're playing a division opponent who's coming off of a bye week. You just got embarrassed by a bad New York Jets team the week before. So, does John Gruden make any kind of adjustments to his offense? No. Same stuff we've seen from this offense all season. Kansas City has one of the worst defenses in the league, especially against the run, which is one of the Raiders' strengths. And you only managed to score 9 points, 6 of which came in garbage time. Chiefs corner Tyrann Mathieu came out after the game and called out Oakland's predictable play calling. He said that they knew when Carr was taking shots downfield by the pre-snap formation. That is unacceptable. You see this team twice a year. You can't just run the same offense and expect different results. It obviously didn't work out the first time this season. The Chiefs came to Oakland and beat your ass by 18 points. So you'd think that John Gruden would come up with something different. Nope. Let's just do the same thing we did last time. It'll be fine. A few weeks ago, Gruden was being mentioned as a potential Coach of the Year candidate. Are you fucking kidding me? This guy will be watching the playoffs from home this January. Another team who will be watching the playoffs from home is the Cleveland Browns. Freddie Kitchens is a fucking idiot. This guy, I cannot stand this guy. He's the most unqualified head coach in the NFL. He has no business standing on an NFL sideline, even in a dump like Cleveland. Over the weekend, Freddie Kitchens was at a movie theater. His daughter had given him a t-shirt that he decided to wear to this movie. On the front of the shirt, it said, "Pittsburgh started it." Only in Cleveland is something like this viewed as acceptable. You're the head coach of the Cleveland Browns in the National Football League. Now, I know Cleveland is a second-rate organization, but this isn't college football. This isn't the XFL. This isn't the Arena Football League. This is the NFL. I'm at a loss for words as to how stupid that was. No wonder the players in Cleveland are swinging helmets at their opponents. Their coach is just as undisciplined as they are. Before the game against the Steelers, Kitchens told a reporter that he was going to take the King of the North title away from Pittsburgh. Has he looked at the standings lately? The last time I checked, Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens were the kings of the AFC North. So you wear a dumbass shirt, then you make a dumbass statement, and you go out Sunday and lose to a quarterback named Duck. Freddie Kitchens is an embarrassment. Why would you add fuel to the fire? Your team is fighting for a slim chance at the postseason. And you go out the week of the game and give Mike Tomlin and the Steelers extra motivation to come out and kick your ass. It makes no fucking sense. I understand now why Baker Mayfield handpicked Freddie Kitchens as his head coach. These two motherfuckers share the same brain. If Mayfield isn't making a ridiculous statement, don't worry. Kitchens will come out and take the lead. Mike Tomlin was starting his third string quarterback, Devlin Hodges, or as he was called repeatedly Sunday, Duck. Hodges actually prefers to be called Duck. I'm sorry, I just can't call a grown-ass man Duck. I can't do it. Anyway, Pittsburgh is trotting out their third string quarterback. You're fighting for your playoff lives in Cleveland, and you find a way to lose this game. I would say Freddie Kitchens would be fired at the end of the season, but with a franchise like the Browns, they're likely to keep him around. I mean, after all, they love this type of stuff in Cleveland. Juvenile behavior from their quarterback and head coach. That's why you're 5-7. All right, let's get to the ugly from this past weekend. Just when we think the New York Jets are turning over a new leaf, starting to become a real football team, they give us a stern reminder that they're still the Jets and they still suck. After winning 3 straight in rather convincing fashion, I was starting to become a believer in the Jets. Sam Darnold had been playing up to his potential. The Jets were starting to get healthy. Defense was playing well. Then the Jets returned to form as one of the worst football teams in this league. The Jets set an NFL record on Sunday. They became the first team in NFL history to lose twice in one season to teams with 0-7 records or worse. Both the Dolphins and the Bungles got their first win of the season against this amazing New York Jets team. I say this sometimes. It's not just losing. It's how the Jets lost. They were dominated by the worst team in the NFL. This all falls on the shoulders of Adam Gase. It looked to me like the Jets overlooked the Bungles. They were overconfident. Oh, we've won 3 straight. We're going to roll over this shitty team in Cincinnati. You can't have that mindset at this level. Same thing happened with the Saints a few weeks ago against the Falcons. The Bungles have the worst run defense in the NFL. So you would think that Adam Gase would design a run-heavy offense, open up the play-action pass. No. We don't do that. Jets ran the ball 17 times. Threw the ball 48. Completely ass backwards. They abandoned the run game early on, and as a result, Sam Darnold was under constant pressure. Sacked 4 times. Don't even get me started on the penalties. 10 penalties for 106 yards. New York was one of my favorite plays this past weekend. We had them as one of our picks on Saturday's podcast. I expected the Jets to roll over the Bungles. Apparently so did they. I couldn't have been more wrong. Adam Gase is safe with his job. He isn't on the hot seat. Can't say the same for Ron Riviera in Carolina. Now, mind you, Panthers ownership came out early last week and said they are not dealing with mediocrity anymore and won't mind cleaning house in the offseason if they have to. So how does Ron Riviera and the Carolina Panthers respond? By coming out and playing one of the worst games of the season and getting embarrassed at home to Dwayne Haskins and the Washington Redskins. Dwayne Haskins is one of the worst quarterbacks in this league right now. Through most of Ron Rivera's tenure in Carolina, the Panthers have packed a strong defense. That's no longer the case. They gave up 248 yards rushing to the Redskins, who are one of the worst offenses in this league. I was surprised when I woke up this morning and Ron Rivera still had a job. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I expected him to be fired after that. People talk about him being one of the better coaches in the NFL. I don't understand it. Well, KC, he's the winningest coach in Panthers history. Who fucking cares? The franchise is only 25 years old. Take away the 2015 Super Bowl run, Rivera's record is 61-62-1. He's a sub 500 coach. In his 8 years in Carolina, he's only had 3 winning seasons. Earlier in his tenure, his teams were known for playing better late in the season. They started off slow, but they got better as the season progressed. That's not the case anymore. They finished last season 1-7. They've lost their last 4 games right now. They have home losses to the Falcons, the Bucks, and the Redskins. David Tepper, the Panthers owner, is pushing for the city of Charlotte to chip in and build a new dome stadium. Well, it's kind of hard to convince them to do that when the stadium for home games is empty like it was Sunday. This team, this franchise, needs to go into a full rebuild. The Ron Riviera, Cam Newton era is over. They peaked in 2015. They got you to a Super Bowl. Since that season, Carolina's 29-31. 1 winning season, 1 playoff appearance. And they were bounced that year in the first round of the playoffs by the Saints. Kyle Allen is clearly not the quarterback of the future in Carolina. Interceptions, fumbles, bad sacks. He is great at creating negative plays for his offense. The Panthers actually had a chance to tie the game against the Redskins late in the fourth quarter. I mean, they were down double digits. They scored a touchdown, got an onside kick. They had a chance to tie this game. On 4th down in the red zone, Kyle Allen drops back to pass, faces a little bit of pressure, runs backwards for about 20 yards, ends up taking a sack. On 4th down. The last thing that you can do in that situation. This run in Carolina for Ron Riviera and Cam Newton is over. It's done. Unfortunately for them, they aren't going to be able to draft high enough to get one of the high-profile quarterbacks coming out of college in 2020. But this franchise needs a full rebuild. General manager needs to be gone. Ron Riviera needs to go. And if I were Cam Newton, I wouldn't want to come back. Cam Newton's 31 years old. This team in Carolina is not contending for a Super Bowl anytime soon. He needs to go to an immediate contender. All right, I'm going to close out today talking about the god-awful Philadelphia Eagles. Would someone in the NFC East please stand up and take control of this division? The Eagles were gifted a Dallas loss on Thanksgiving, followed by an early Christmas present from the scheduling gods who placed the hapless Miami Dolphins on their schedule following the Cowboys' loss. So, how does Philadelphia repay the scheduling gods? By laying a fucking egg in Miami. The Eagles' defense, which has been the strength of this team all season, while Carson Wentz has been figuring out how to be a quarterback again, was disastrous Sunday. They made Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Dolphins look like the greatest show on turf of the late 90s Rams. An offense that averages 277 yards a game put up over 400 yards on the Eagles' defense. Miami hasn't had a quarterback throw for over 300 yards all season. Ryan Fitzpatrick threw for 351 yards against this Eagles defense on Sunday. The Dallas Cowboys are begging Philadelphia to take control of this division. Please take the division from us so we can fire Jason Garrett. And Philadelphia keeps returning the favor. The NFC East doesn't deserve a representative in the playoffs. At this point, it's likely the winner of the NFC East will be a sub-500 team. What's more mind-boggling is Doug Peterson, Philadelphia's head coach, and his big-ass mouth. Back in October, he went on Philadelphia sports radio and guaranteed that the Eagles would go to Dallas and beat the Cowboys. They ended up getting their asses kicked 37-10. Immediately after the loss to Miami Sunday afternoon, Doug Peterson said that the Dolphins were a good football team. Is he out of his fucking mind? A team with the worst point differential in the NFL. A team that many, myself included, accused of tanking the season earlier this year. A team full of scrubs and throwaways that other teams don't want. Is a good football team? Then he makes things worse by going on radio Monday morning in Philadelphia and saying that he believed that Miami played harder than his team did on Sunday. He said that the Dolphins wanted it more. Really? Let's see. Your team is fighting for a spot in the playoffs. Fighting for a home playoff game that will be undeserved because the NFC East is an embarrassment. The Dolphins are trying to lose to maintain draft position. And you mean to tell me that Miami wanted it more? Seems like there's a problem in the Eagles locker room to me. When pressed on this answer, Doug Peterson backtracked a bit and went into a long diatribe where basically everyone was to blame, but no one was to blame. Much of his spiel made little sense, so it's not even worth repeating here. Let me simplify things for you, Doug Peterson. Your team is a disaster. Your young quarterback has lost his confidence. He can't hit open receivers from a yard away. You're the violinist and the band on the Titanic at this point. And the crazy thing is, you're still in a good position to make the playoffs, but you cannot get out of your own way. As crazy as it sounds, I still like the Eagles to win the NFC East. I'm sticking with my preseason prediction that the Cowboys will not make the playoffs and the Eagles will win this division. But I'm going to need to see something from this team over the next 4 weeks. This team has lost 3 straight in 5 of their last 7 games. You close out the season with the Giants twice, the Redskins, and the Cowboys. 4 very winnable games. Don't fuck it up. The Cowboys are essentially begging you to win this division. It's going to be maddening in the NFC playoffs. For starters, you're going to have a team like the Rams, who could end the season 10-6, miss the playoffs while a shitty Eagles or Cowboys team make it. Then to add insult to injury, a wild card team like Seattle or Minnesota, or even possibly the 49ers, are going to have to travel to Philadelphia or Dallas for their playoff game. I'd be pissed off as a member of that roster or as a fan of one of those teams. You could have a 12-4 wild card team traveling to Philly or Dallas in the playoffs to play an 8-8 or 9-7 team. Only because they won their shitty division, which is the worst division in football. All right, that's all for today, guys. I'll be back Friday morning. Hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Leave the 5-star rating on iTunes. If there's anything that you guys want me to cover, leave me a comment, or you can hit me up on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Have a good week. I'll see you Friday morning.